afternoon. Welcome to the GW Institute for Korean Studies Korea Policy Forum. This is our final and best event of the semester. But I'm also very excited to welcome today the Honorable Senator Andy Kim from the great state of New Jersey to the Elliott School of International Affairs. My name is Celeste Arrington. I'm professor of political science and international affairs and the director of the GW Institute for Korean Studies, or GWIX. GWIX was founded nearly a decade ago to try to broaden the discussion and the understanding of Korea within the Beltway and beyond. And there is no better embodiment of someone who is committed to promoting the understanding of U.S. ROK relations, I think, than Senator Kim. So it's a great honor to welcome him here today. In terms of welcoming remarks, we're going to have two guests, very special guests today to welcome Senator Kim. First is Interim Provost John Locke, who will be returning, I believe, to the Dean of the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences. And after his brief remarks, then our Elliott School of International Affairs well-known Dean Alyssa Ayers will be welcoming Senator Andy Kim. She is herself, like Senator Andy Kim, a foreign policy practitioner and also a scholar of U.S. Asia and U.S. South Asia relations, and served as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for South Asia, I believe overlapping with Senator Kim at the State Department. So without further ado, I'll turn things over to John Locke now, and please join me in welcoming Provost John Locke.
Thank you, Professor Arrington, for that welcome, and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the George Washington University, including our television viewers. It is such a pleasure to see such a strong gathering of students, faculty, staff, and distinguished guests. And I'd really like to thank the GW Institute for Korean Studies for organizing today's event, and in particular, Professor Arrington for all she does for the Institute as its director. We are truly honored, grateful, and very proud to have the Institute enhancing our scholarly activities in Korean studies as part of the Elliott School of International Affairs. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to Senator Andy Kim. We are so pleased that he was able to be here with us this afternoon for this special lecture. Really means a lot to us. I was sharing with the senator when he came in. It means so much to us as a GW community to be able to welcome public servants like yourself. And it's inspiring to our students, and really looking forward to the conversation. Because at GW here, we really are deeply committed to public service, global engagement, and educating leaders for an interconnected world. And of course, that is especially true here at the Elliott School. GW's recently launched strategic framework recognizes that we are both distinctive and distinct in how we can amplify our ability to create positive change in the world. And our location in Washington, D.C. is a strong enabler of that mission. In our ongoing work to advance our academic and research mission, we see the university not as separate from policy, but as part of a broader ecosystem that connects scholarship, institutions, and decision makers. And one of our greatest strengths is serving as a premier convener of thought leadership, creating a forum for some of the most timely discussions, as well as providing our students direct engagement with practitioners. By creating opportunities to hear from public servants, our students can understand how policy is actually made and appreciate the complexity of real-world decisions and see pathways for meaningful careers. Public service is a career unlike others. It is a true calling. It is both demanding and essential. It requires judgment, resilience, and a commitment to the public good. We are proud to prepare students to be leaders who aspire to contribute to society in this way. And today's speaker exemplifies that tradition of service, and I can think of no better host than the Elliott School of International Affairs, which has a tremendous legacy of such service. Senator Andy Kim is widely respected for his dedication to public service, and I'd like to extend my gratitude to him again for being here this afternoon to share his perspective. Many thanks again to the GW Institute for Korean Studies for convening this important discussion. I think everyone here will have the opportunity to learn much And I encourage everyone to enjoy the conversation and another one of these only at GW moments. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Provost Locke, and welcome everyone to the Elliott School. My name is Alyssa Ayers. I'm so honored to be the dean of this great school, and it is a pleasure today to join you for this important discussion. I want to congratulate the GW Institute for Korean Studies for organizing this event, very timely. As you heard from Provost Locke at the Elliott School, we really place great value on connecting academic learning with real-world policy engagement, and that's especially valuable here in Washington, D.C., where those worlds intersect every day. Today's lecture, The U.S. ROK Alliance in a Multipolar Era, the Role of Congress, speaks directly to that mission. As the international system becomes more multipolar, alliance management is growing more complex. The U.S. ROK Alliance continues to evolve. In response to new strategic realities, we have deterrence, economic security, technological competition are all increasingly interconnected. And for our students, this is exactly the kind of issue where theory meets practice. And it highlights the important role that Congress plays in shaping U.S. foreign policy through legislation, oversight, and engagement with allies. Understanding that role is essential for anyone seeking to work in international affairs. And that's why it is especially meaningful to have with us today a policymaker who brings experience across both the executive and legislative branches. So it is our great honor to welcome Senator Andy Kim here to the Elliott School. Senator Kim is a lifelong public servant whose career has included service at the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, the Department of Defense, the State Department, and the White House, where he served as Iraq Director on the National Security Council and as a civilian advisor in Afghanistan. He later served in the House of Representatives on the Foreign Affairs and Armed Services Committees, as well as on the Select Committee on Strategic Competition with China. He now brings that experience to the Senate, where he continues to work on national security and international economic policy. We are so thrilled to welcome you here, and I now give the floor to Senator Andy Kim.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the kind introduction. And I really feel blessed to have this chance to be able to be here. And it's actually kind of like surreal coming back to this neighborhood. This is the neighborhood where I first really kind of put down roots here in DC as I worked across the street over at the State Department. It gives me a little PTSD to actually come back in the area. But I came here to starting up as a junior officer at the State Department, all while I was actually finishing my dissertation. So I was still a graduate student, continuing to do this work. And what you just said there, Dean, about that combination between theory and studies, theory and rigor, that is what brought me here today. Because I think it's so important now more than ever that students that are gearing up in such an incredibly turbulent time both understand the intellectual side and the academic side, but also the practical side. And that's something that I really saw, and I'm happy to dive in if people have questions. Just the difference that we see in terms of how foreign policy and policy writ large is thought of and implemented, and how different that is oftentimes from how it's theorized. And your ability to be able to navigate that, regardless of whether you go into public service or other types of things, are just going to be really critical to your success, especially in this very chaotic time. I wanted to start by just congratulating the Institute for Korean Studies on your 10-year anniversary. How amazing is that? Your mission is an important one, and it creates bridges between countries and cultures. It creates understandings and underpinnings of the knowledge required to advance an alliance between two incredibly important nations, a friendship between peoples, and it's an alliance and a friendship that has stood the test of time and is needed now more than ever. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about the challenges and opportunities of this new era we are entering and how this relationship can shape that era, not just for these two countries, but writ large for our global environment. And in particular, I want to talk about the role that Congress can play in strengthening this relationship. I want to discuss how, by leaning further into the critical relationship, we can build a more resilient future, a future that delivers opportunity for working families, drives innovation, and shores up the vulnerable supply chain that we depend on. We are in an era that is largely defined and dominated by a feeling of anxiety. This is something that many citizens of many countries are feeling, including those of the United States and ROK. Now, most Americans can't cover an emergency expense right now, yet they watch the news and they see a president entering us into wars in our name and on our dime, but without our consent. And in town halls in New Jersey, I remember this one time I had a person come to tell me that she feels so much anxiety about cost of living and the challenges that she faced and the unpredictability of this moment. She described it to me as feeling like she is drowning. It is an anxiety that comes without knowing what comes next, or if there is a brighter future that can be handed off to our next generation. Trump's war in Iran has exacerbated this insecurity. We've already seen the skyrocketing of prices at the pump, and economists are warning of the long-term chaos that this could ensue, whether global food supply shortages, commercial flights cancellations, or price spikes on a number of different fronts. These painful side effects of a chaotic and sometimes rudderless foreign policy are felt globally and show us more now than ever how interconnected we all are. The anxiety I heard in my town halls in New Jersey was echoed in Seoul last year when I had a town hall there with a number of young Koreans that live there. What I heard almost universally, whether here or abroad, was that sense of worry about their families as their parents grow older, about finding a job that won't be wiped away by AI and technology, and about security in a world surrounded by insecurity. For so much of our life, America has been a force that on our best days could ease that anxiety and bring people together towards progress. What I hear, though, in my town halls is a sense that that vision of America is not coming back. And the truth is, there is no going back. The world is fundamentally changing around us. We need to go forward. But going forward in a moment like this can seem impossible. Anxiety has a way of freezing us in our tracks. But I see hope in the history of an incredible alliance and in the stories of Koreans and Americans who have shaped one of the world's most important relationships. The global order has already been undergoing tremendous change even prior to this administration. And it's clear that it will be fundamentally different at the end of this administration, one way or another. And as we seek to shape a new global order, it will be imperative for the United States to lean into our partnerships and alliances in a way that builds a more resilient future, better meets the needs of American families. South Korea is a vital partner for the United States on our journey to a more resilient future. And as we move forward, we need to update this critical alliance and, frankly, all of our alliances and partnerships to meet the needs of the decade ahead. That means building a resilience focused on multilateralism and minilateralism that can help us reduce our vulnerabilities. This type of resilience-focused diplomacy will also mean updating and adapting our alliances to be more flexible and durable, to organize them not just around defense relationships or geography, but also around economic and technological relationships that will power our future global economy. Doing so will help address the moments of anxiety and build towards greater opportunity. By fostering this partnership takes work, and Congress cannot wait for a future administration to start. I believe there are three actions Congress must take now to strengthen our ties with South Korea going into a more uncertain future. First, Congress must make clear to our allies and partners that our country is bigger than one man. Our relationships with other nations are not created in the Oval Office alone. They are built through sustained interactions at all levels of government, and to maximize this partnership, Congress and the National Assembly need to play key roles. When I traveled to Seoul last year, I had the chance to meet many members from the National Assembly, and since then I've continued to engage as they visited the capital. Though we work on other sides of the world, we work in a common purpose, delivering for a constituency that wants a more resilient world in this growingly anxiety and chaos-filled environment. To me, that starts with building stronger ties between our two bodies, as well as with other critical partners like Japan. The legislative exchanges often go unnoticed. They're often under the radar. But in an age where, especially in the United States, the White House has become a place of policy whiplash, Congress can serve as a venue for lasting conversation and collaboration. And that is why I have worked to try to build a trilateral interparliamentary process between the United States, South Korea, and Japan. Second, Congress must act to protect our immigrant workers, safeguard universities as a hub of innovation, and develop innovation partnerships with other nations to gain valuable expertise in areas such as shipbuilding, for instance. My parents came to the United States over 50 years ago. My father as a foreign student, someone who came here to be able to study and engage in incredibly dynamic technology and innovation. My father went on to be a geneticist and somebody who served his whole career on trying to cure cancer and Alzheimer's. My parents' story and the story of so many families that came from Korea to America seeking a better life is one of resilience. It's a resilience that we need to get us through this age of anxiety. Indeed, the state I represent, New Jersey, is home to more than 100,000 Korean Americans. If my parents were making the decision to immigrate to the United States today, as they did 50 years ago, I don't know that they would or have been given the opportunities to do so, given the immense challenges and obstacles that are now being thrown up by this administration. Finally, Congress must push back against this administration's erratic trade policies that stifle cooperation and scares away foreign direct investment. Access to trade makes consumer goods and groceries more affordable, while foreign direct investment provide jobs and opportunities for working class Americans. I've seen this in my own state, where over the last 20 years, we've seen Korean companies invest nearly $700 million into New Jersey. They've created thousands of jobs. And we've seen major corporations like Samsung, LG, and Celltrion base their US and North American operation headquarters in New Jersey. I look not too far from my home in South Jersey, where I can see the work of another company, Hanwha, and what they're doing at the Philly shipyard to be able to envision growing more jobs, more production, and helping the United States build a more secure and resilient supply chain and be able to safeguard us from global shocks. Similarly, it's only through cooperation that the United States and South Korea can safeguard our most vulnerable supply chains. Currently, China controls 2/3 of the world's rare earth and refines nearly 90% of them. We have seen China's willingness to leverage this power by cutting off access to rare earth, such as magnets. Rare earth minerals are essential. Also, we see this same vulnerability when it comes to pharmaceuticals and defense technologies. And we need to make sure that we are doing this not only in terms of our military concerns, but also the technology that we have even in our own pockets. The material that we rely on to build the technologies of the future cannot be held hostage because of conflict or because of worry about one. The United States and South Korea are on a path to finalizing a critical minerals framework to deepen cooperation, but this is just a start. Congress must codify these collaborations to ensure their durability while also investing in critical mineral research and funding for critical mineral recycling. It's clear that the global order is changing, but we have an opportunity in this moment to meet the change with better partnerships that better serve the needs of the American people. If we update our alliances and partnerships, they can serve not just to anchor us in this storm, but to be able to be the fuel that helps us sail towards calmer and safer seas. I am optimistic not just in the ability for this alliance to build resilience, but to build a new era of opportunity that my two boys, 8 and 10 years old, will be able to grow up in and thrive. My boys have a story that is only possible because of the relationship between the United States and South Korea. and their future is also brighter because of it. Their future is brighter because of the work that scientists from our countries are doing together to discover new cures and bring new innovations to life. The economic opportunities afforded through trade and mutual investments, the technological breakthroughs resulting from our joint efforts, and the security of our military cooperations that are offered there. And their future is brighter because of the work being done here at this very institute, work that brings us closer together and centers us around a common understanding and common purpose. The work that shows what's possible when we invest in this alliance that has given us so much. With that, I thank you, and I look forward to the following discussion. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Senator Kim, for those inspiring remarks. And I, as someone who's trying to train students to develop the expertise in U.S. ROK relations, as well as the public service commitment, I was very inspired by your remarks.
Thank you.
If I might take the moderator's prerogative and ask the first question before opening it up to everyone else. I think one of the things that came out in your remarks was that Korean society and American society are facing many shared challenges. You mentioned housing prices, fear about future employment opportunities, in your own father's care, for example, caregiver shortages in both countries and the high cost of care as we face an aging society. And so I was wondering, in the trilateral legislative exchanges that you mentioned, are there particular issue areas in which, say, the United States could learn from Korea? Yeah. Historically, going back, I mean, to when your parents came here, these were very different ROK and US societies where often the ROK was learning from the United States. Has it changed, and are there issues in which you think we could learn something from Korea?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that there are a lot of things. First of all, I mean, I think we need to recognize how far that relationship has gone, over the, 7+ decades of the alliance. I mean, I think that's really remarkable. And I keep saying, the last 70 years, so much of that has been built upon what was, really started as a defense alliance. But as I said, that really can't be the main driver going forward. There are no doubt still geostrategic and defense concerns, but the situation is fundamentally different. I mean, it's. I was thinking about it. My kids, they're in school right now, 3rd grade and 5th grade. And I remember when I was in 3rd grade or 5th grade, I would get teased when I bring gimbap to school for lunch and things like that. And now they sell gimbap at Trader Joe's, and K-pop Demon Hunters is just all the rage, and being Korean is cool. And I just I think there's so much to be able to build off from that shows that this relationship needs to be one that is beyond just the geostrategy. And I think that that's what gets to so many of the concerns that I see as well. You're right. When I was at doing that town hall in Seoul, talking to some of these young people, I mean, one of them literally told me that they don't want to have kids because they don't want their kids to have to go through what they did. I mean, that was just so tough and depressing to see. And you see it playing out right now in the demographic trajectory of Korea, which is amongst the most alarming that I've ever seen. It is an actual existential threat, to that society. But I will say, I hear, unfortunately, some similar comments here in the United States of just deep cynicism and concern, especially from young people, about it. I told you I worked across the street at the State Department, and one of the biggest fallacies that I think I look back on as someone who's worked in both the executive branch and the legislature is that when I was at the State Department, I was often told to really just focus in on foreign policy, to not really think at all about domestic policy. Even when I was at the White House, I was on the National Security Council. I was specifically told not to really engage with the Domestic Policy Council, that these issues are separate, that we have to firewall them and make sure we're doing foreign policy without consideration of politics. But in that effort, we lose sight of the fact that there really is no division. If there is no just foreign policy and domestic policy, they are interconnected. I was just doing a hearing, doing oversight over Secretary RFK Jr. yesterday. Cuts to the NIH affects our foreign policy. like things that are happening abroad with the tariffs that affects our domestic policy, right? And so therein lies, I think, some of what we need to be thinking through as we think through how do we reimagine what policy making means in this era of such deep concerns that cut across the board. When you see this Iran war, the concerns that people are having, not just about potential risks abroad, it's very much right at our gas pumps, right at our kitchen tables. And that really shows just how interconnected this is. And I think the Korea-US relationship is one of the deepest embodiments of just where that breakdown needs to happen.
And it's such a rich alliance, much beyond the security alliance.
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
So many different levels. So thank you very much. I want to open it up to questions, and I'll take 2 pairs of questions. Again, if you can identify yourself briefly and ask a question. We'll start with Dean Ayers and then go in the back.
Thanks so much again for spending time with us this afternoon. In your prepared remarks, you spoke quite a bit about resilience, and I'd love to hear how you conceptualize resilience. I imagine it's more than just economic resilience. Can you speak a little bit more about how you think about the dimensions of resilience and how we could work towards that?
Yeah, I did. I mean, it was definitely the word of the speech. I'm glad you picked up on it because because what I've been trying to grapple with is, I'm on the Hill. And as I said, and as you heard, I have a lot of concerns about where foreign policy is going, where this administration is going. But I'm a deep believer that I cannot just say that I oppose this might makes right type of approach to foreign policy. I have to think through and try to put forward something different. What I came to understand after having gone to the Munich Security Conference and other types of engagements over the last few months, I have really internalized the fact that we will not have an opportunity in the future for a new president to get sworn in and announce to the world that America is back. That is just no longer possible. We have zero credibility in that way, both home and abroad. So the question is, well, what next? How do we try then to be able to continue to be a global leader, but have the humility that we have a huge trust deficit as well as real challenges at home? So I have come up with this idea that if we are no longer seen as the indispensable nation globally, if we are often now seen as an undependable, unreliable nation, and we don't want to give into that, I believe we need to pave a path forward to what I call being a resilient nation. Now, that does include, yes, some of the things I talked about being able to close off and try to address some of these economic vulnerabilities, whether through critical minerals, the lack of energy production we're doing, pharmaceutical vulnerabilities. But that's in part because I say we need to now expand and redefine what national security means to show that economic security is national security. We should be approaching the economic security of families in America with the same level of vigor that we do when we talk about national security and military security and defense. I see this country trip over themselves to spend trillions of dollars on wars that I played a role in and saw just how quickly our country would move forward on countering terrorism. But I see nothing that resembles that level of urgency when it comes to addressing economic security of families here at home. So those are some of the things that I am trying to think through. Another thing that I'm trying to engage on is about understanding the future of warfare, for instance, something that I see our country deeply unprepared for. As someone who worked at the Pentagon before and see so much of the challenges of dealing with legacy systems and just the rigidity of our bureaucracy. We see right now with the velocity of the Ukraine-Russia war, the advent of technology, is in particular drone technology. We are not prepared for that moment. And I think resilience very much needs to play a role on a number of different fronts. So yes, I very much believe that, when you look at a country as great as ours, as strong as ours in many ways, but we built in ways that are not strong enough to be able to endure these crises that we are experiencing right now. I often liken our country to kind of like a tall skyscraper built in a previous era that just doesn't have the capacity to be able to be resilient against earthquakes, for instance. We lack the flexible, infrastructure necessary, and the columns and the types of foundation that is necessary. We lack the reinforcements that are necessary. So yes, we are big and strong, but when it comes to these types of global shocks and what I call this era of crisis and anxiety that we live in, we are just not built for the time. So that's why I think we need a new national project of resilience that can guide us both in our foreign policy and our domestic policy.
Do you see particular opportunities within the U.S. ROK alliance to enhance that resilience?
Yeah, for instance, I mean, like as I was saying on the critical minerals side, I mean, this is a place where even today I was having conversations with Korean companies that are working with the United States to be able to identify some of these vulnerabilities and actually be able to mitigate these problems. These are not things that the United States can do alone. We do not have the resources or the capabilities to do all the mining and processing of rare earth material ourselves. But in the same way that we built NATO to be able to be a multilateral tool for defense, what is our NATO of critical minerals? What is our NATO of resilience? And I think finding ways to be able to do that together is important. This administration has been taking actions on critical minerals, not with the speed and velocity that I'd like, but they've also been doing it primarily through bilateral means. That is not the approach that is going to lead us with the kind of architecture necessary. So I think what US and Korea has done is a guidepost. I think there's a lot there we're seeing with the investments coming into the United States on shipbuilding and other types of efforts. And I do see the US, Korea, Japan trilateral as one of the preeminent examples of that minilateralism that I was saying, not just the multilateralism, but a minilateralism like the Quad, like the Trilat. These are things where we can help rebuild some of the trust that has been lost so much. But why I think it's important is when I was at the Munich Security Conference, I really saw for the first time in my life the reality of that other countries are planning for a post-America world. They are planning for a world where they are reducing their dependence on us. They are using words and phrases like de-risking, words that we use to talk about de-risking ourselves from China and Russia and elsewhere. They are now using that word about us, de-risking from the United States. So again, trying to find what is a path in which we can try to reassert some credibility and trust, and then to be able to build out from there.
Thank you. I'm going to take 2 questions this time. So I promised in the back, and then I'll go up here in the front.
Hi, I'm Sang-in, a first-year SBS student here at Elliott. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Congressman, for your time being here. Question regarding US ROK-US alliance. From the perspective of Congress, what is the most realistic or pragmatic role or contribution that you expect from Korea to strengthen our partnerships moving forward?
My name is Jaden Yu. I'm a freshman here at the Elliott School of International Affairs. I was curious, since having kids of your own, do you believe your philosophy in international affairs has changed a lot compared to when you were a young professional back then? And if so, what do you think the lesson is that you can give to young professionals like me?
Yeah, great questions. Look, I'll start with the first one. In terms of I guess you said like kind of strongest contribution that we would hope from South Korea to the United States. I mean, look, right now, this administration talks about it in terms of billions of dollars, right? They measure it based off of what, $350 billion that they want to see invested. Meanwhile, that investment that comes to the United States, we saw, the money for companies to build plants here, battery plants here and other things. But we saw an incident a couple months ago where there was an immigration raid at a factory down in Georgia, and you saw Korean workers literally handcuffed. The greatest contribution isn't the money, it's the talent. And the talent is really what's going to drive our capacity to innovate going forward. It's the talent that brought my father to the United States. It's the talent that is a strategic advantage of the United States, including over competitors like China. One of the greatest strategic advantages is, despite all of our flaws as a nation, people still want to come here and study here and innovate here. Now, less are wanting to do that now than before, but it is still a strength of ours. And that is something that I hope we can continue to push on going forward, and to be able to have that relationship of mutual respect that is necessary. But I just continue to see that not being the case, as we have a foreign policy that is about bullying. It is not about treating others as equal partners or as partners of any magnitude. It is really about extracting as much as we can get, out of a relationship, as we saw with the tariff wars, for instance, overriding trade deals that we have come through and agreed upon. That is not a sustainable relationship going forward. So that is what I am worried about, but I hope that America sees that talent is so important. And we see immigration as not just about our southern border, but also about how we propel our nation forward when it comes to being able to innovate for the technology of the future. Your question was about just how my role as a father has shaped how I see things and what that means for the next generation. Is that right? Yes, sir. So you're right. I came into foreign policy. I did not expect to go into foreign policy. I did not expect to go into government work, per se. I was a sophomore in college when September 11th happened. On that day, I woke up that morning never imagining about going into foreign policy or national security, but by 6 p.m. that day, I decided to commit my life to national security. I'm someone that I can't even recall ever hearing the name of the country Afghanistan before, prior to that day. And then it was a very humbling experience 10 years later, being in Afghanistan as a strategic advisor to General Petraeus and General Allen. I very much saw my world just focused on national security. When people ask me why I decided to run for Congress, it was because I became a father. And I was no longer just concerned about foreign policy. I was concerned about education. I was concerned about healthcare, as one of my 2 kids was born with a pre-existing condition that affected his own health. And so that was a deeply transformative experience for me, to see now me not just thinking about what I want over the course of my own lifetime, but seeing it now transcending past that. But it was also about just a deeply human experience of raising a family and seeing so many of the anxieties that I feel now also shared with so many other people around me. And so, yes, I am sitting before you as a United States Senator, but if you want to have the best insights in terms of how I make decisions and what motivates me right now, it is that I stand before you and sit before you as a father. In terms of what that means for you, is you all are in school and growing into professions in another moment of great transformation. So in the same way that I was in your seats during the last change of global order, you are now students in this change. And I know it can feel really stressful. I know it can feel very humbling, and you often might feel like helplessness of like, what can I do when there's so much happening? I will just tell you that it's actually in these moments of such fluidity between global eras that young people, especially hardworking, dedicated young people, can actually have an outsized role in trying to affect it. The fact that I was, 28, 29 when I was advising, General Petraeus and General Allen in Afghanistan. I was 30, 31 when I was at the White House coordinating the counter-ISIS war. These were opportunities that were only afforded to me because there was so much craziness happening. And I was a 34-year-old that had the guts, or in some other ways, my wife says, the stupidity to run for Congress. and to be, 41 years old when I decided to run for Senate, and now I helped double the number of millennials in the U.S. Senate single-handedly on the Democrat side, helping to try to bring in a new era of a new generation of leadership. So I hope you see this moment not as a moment of helplessness, but as a moment of empowerment, of a moment of agency where you can play a tremendous role over the next 10 years, 20 years, and be able to make your mark. You will be the leaders of this country as my kids grow up. So please don't screw it up, okay?
Thank you. We'll go over here and then the next row. Thank you.
I'd like to ask a little bit broader question. As a person from earlier international public service and a foreigner, and as well as the long-time supporter of ours here in Washington, D.C., I have long admired John F. Kennedy, his spirit of the civic duty, moral clarity, and national purpose. These days, quite often, I'm wondering how his spirit is carried forward. So my question to you is, how do you, in this very complex, the global context and very polarized context, how do you see Congress, and in particular, Democratic Party, renewing this legacy and spirit of the unifying leadership in the sustaining institutions that embody that spirit, and the strengthening the alliance, as well as the speaking to the American public more broadly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll take one more question. Great.
I can do both of those. We can just do both.
Both of at the same time.
Thank you, Senator, for coming in for our students. And I'd like to thank Celeste and Professor Kim for hosting this fascinating event. My name is Dr. Jung-Ho Seo. I teach management and entrepreneurship at the business school. I also serve as a project director at the KMI, Korean Management Institute, which is housed under the GWSB School of Business. When I RSVP'd this event, I was thinking about the foundation of the US ROK Alliance. On a personal note, I'd like to share that I also served in the Joint Army, ROK US Joint Army, as a South Korean citizen. And the foundation of the US ROK Alliance, I think it is the modern history of South Korea's democracy, which I'm super proud of. Whenever I have an interaction with my colleagues, friends, in every generation in the US, I sense that, I realize that a lack of knowledge of this history. So do you have a plan or a vision on raising awareness of the history of South Korea's democracy?
Thank you, Senator Kim. I'm Shi Kwang, a history graduate student here at GW. I'm glad you mentioned the domestic politics before, because my question is about domestic politics. So when the former President Young unlawfully declared the emergency law 2 years ago, his excuse was the opposition party was pro-North Korea and pro-China, right? And when his supporters raiding in the street, they are waving American flag and the flag of Israel. The late Charlie Kirk visited South Korea and Japan before he was assassinated. My question is, do you see an emerging right-wing alliance between Korean and American? And if so, do you worry about its threat to the democracy in these two countries? Thank you.
You're asking if I see an alliance between right-wing in both the United States and Korea?
Yeah.
I don't know how much interaction that they have. I don't know if there is alignment. I mean, I see alignment on so many fronts when it comes to For instance, like I see a lot of alignment between what we saw with Viktor Orban and in Hungary and what this administration is doing. A lot of certain kind of shared tools and whatnot. I don't know enough about sort of the domestic politics in Korea and how the parties engage or whatnot to sort of see any alignment on that front. But what I will say, just in any democracy right now around the world, we are seeing some similar challenges to what we're feeling in the United States, where there is a growing sense of nationalism that is oftentimes being weaponized and is kind of a front for a sense of xenophobia and other types of things that I think are really worrisome on a number of different fronts. So I think a lot of democracies around the world are facing similar types of manifestations. Again, I don't know enough about just sort of the domestic politics in Korea to sort of diagnose it similar to what I feel and see here in the United States. But it is there are common threads that we see across the board. But I think that gets to, the other question here, which is that, look, there needs to be that deeper sense of history and that sense of knowledge. And I need to have it. I need to gain that. I have a sister who is a history professor about US, South Korea, who always helps me kind of learn more and more. But I do have that deeper appreciation, though, for where things have come and this understanding that we can't take that growth of Korea over the past few decades for granted in terms of what allowed for Korea to be able to accelerate. It's something that I hear a lot of when I engage with other countries, because Korea is very much seen as one of the most extraordinary success stories in terms of growth, both democratically and economically, that we've ever seen. I mean, to go from a donor receiving nation to a donor giving nation, to see, to now become a top 10 GDP nation. I mean, it's extraordinary what has been accomplished. But again, it didn't just happen on its own. And so, yes, I think there needs to be that greater appreciation for that history. But I think that leads into, the first question is, like when I'm thinking through how to be able to preserve this project of democracy in America, the answer is similar. It's about having that deeper appreciation, that step back. It's not just about the history. The history teaches us to recognize that we're part of something bigger than all of us. So the history is what gives us a sense of humility, because I sense so much hubris in our politics right now. We have members of Congress and other leaders that talk as if they know all the right answers, as if they have all the right solutions and policies, but that's just not true. And so, yes, a lot of how I approach the work that I do comes from this politics of humility, from this sense that the answer to the question of how do we heal this country, the United States, how do we heal these challenges globally, comes from this sense of reigniting a new era of public service. You cited, John F. Kennedy as certainly an inspiration, and I would go as far as to say we need to ignite a new "ask not what this country can do for you" kind of moment in this country. So yes, with the work that I try to do, a lot of it is focused on the policy, but I can't implement that policy unless we can fix the brokenness of our politics right now. And that isn't just about campaign finance reform. It isn't just about the anti-corruption work I'm trying to do. It isn't just about pushing back on individual policies of this administration. There is a deeper cut down to the bone that this country is facing right now. And that's why I've also been introducing legislation that would supercharge civics education in this country, that would try to build new pathways to public service in this nation. I was able to convert into civil service in this government through programs like the Presidential Management Fellowship Program that no longer exists because this president got rid of the executive order. So I have now codified, I'm trying to codify that program and other programs of public service into federal law now through bills that I've introduced, trying to restore and repair and rebuild a public service that has been hollowed out and denigrated by this president. So yes, I am trying to make sure that we are engaged, but we always have to make certain that we're not trying to protect institutions solely for institution's sake. Every institution, including the State Department, needs reform. Every department that I've ever worked in has deep problems of efficiencies, in the same way that private sector organizations do as well. Public sector organizations face it in different ways. So I don't discount the need for reforms and changes. As someone who got my start at USAID, yes, I want to rebuild foreign assistance, but I'm not going to rebuild it exactly as it was at USAID. I'm trying to work with others to be able to rebuild it in a different way that is meeting our new, more modern challenges that we face and address some of the fundamental issues that I did see that prevented USAID from reaching its full potential. So those are the ways in which we need to do it. We cannot be seen as protectors of a status quo that the vast majority of Americans and people globally see as fundamentally flawed. We do have a broken democracy and a broken politics, but that doesn't mean we have to just scrap it all aside. But it also doesn't mean we just rebuild it exactly as it was.
I wholeheartedly agree and applaud your efforts on this front. And GW was one of the dozens of universities around the country that, after 7 decades of funding for international and foreign language education from the Department of Education under Title VI, suddenly it was cut last fall. And that type of training to instill in students an awareness of the rest of the world, deep expertise and language expertise, including with critical languages like Korean, critical for our national security, is now decimated. Yeah. And so I would add that to your long list of to-do things in Congress. But I would be happy to partner. But I also agree with you that academia also has reforms that we can and are undergoing now to restore public trust and to serve the public interest better.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, look, I'll just say, I mean, that's something that, again, I see so important. You know, I felt like there needs to be such a greater moment stepping up of pushing, pushing out the ideas. You know, do not expect Congress and those currently in government to be the sole generators of the ideas to be able to fix this country. You know, you all have as much of a say and an importance in this role. And I just find too often those that have the greatest expertise are often the ones that are least willing to put forward concrete ideas because they understand the nuances, they understand the caveats that have to come forward. But what I will say is that space is then being filled by people who don't have the expertise, that have no shame in thinking that they have figured out what they think is the right way to go about it, and have the hubris and the audacity to seek positions of power to try to implement that. So one thing that I learned from my first boss at the State Department that I thought was really great, he said, you can't have good government unless you have good people working in government. It's incredibly important. Government so often is looked at as some big organization of cogs and wheels, as if it's just this, this kind of, amorphous, structure. But it's not. It's about the people. And the quality of the government is reflective of the quality of government. If you have egotistical, narcissistic, power-hungry people in government, you will have an egotistical, narcissistic, power-hungry government. But if you have a government full of people who believe that that believe that empathy is a strength, not a weakness, people that understand the importance of public service and are willing to respect everybody, including those that they disagree with, you will have an altogether different kind of government. But what my boss also followed up with that is saying that you can be a good person and still have sharp elbows too. You know, it is incumbent upon us, as I see so many challenges and I see so many people in Congress that seem more interested in being social influencers rather than lawmakers. I see so many people in Congress that are just not qualified, not in a matter of degrees and education, but just unqualified in terms of their commitment to serving everybody in this country. And I see that, I can't stop it everywhere in this country. But I sure as heck can make sure that they never get this Senate seat, that I can protect my part of this democracy and to be able to do my best to be able to safeguard this so each of us can do our part. But I just encourage you, develop up expertise, develop up your knowledge, but don't be afraid to use it, because others are using their tools at their maximum capabilities. And again, I find too often those that know the most are the least willing to be able to express it.
I think some of the work that say that GWIX is doing can help think of new ideas to solve these problems between the US and the ROK.
Yeah, like I hope it was helpful for you to hear from me and give you my thoughts. But like I said, like I do a lot of these types of things as a member of Congress. I should be listening to you with an equal level of time, because many of you are studying and engaged on these issues, including the US, South Korea relationship. You're probably spending more time pound per pound every day and every week about that than I am. Like, I need to hear from you. So, like, let's find ways to have your voices heard. I do not have a monopoly on the best ideas of how to move this relationship forward, in this room. So I just, I put that out there. Is like, I think that's where we need to get towards. And to be able to make sure that we are approaching this, because what's been working before isn't working anymore. And I think a lot of you, especially in this moment of such anxiety and such fluidity of a new era, you have so much to be able to offer in. And, I hope to be able to work with you on this incredibly important project.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we are out of time to work on it and listen to the whole group today. But please,
this is not a one-time deal. We will find opportunities to be able to engage going forward.
That would be
That's
excellent.
a promise to all of you.
Because we probably won't solve the North Korea problem or the future upgrading of the U.S. ROK alliance.
Well, not in one session.
One session.
Maybe two. Maybe two.
So, thank you very much, and please join me in thanking Senator Andy Kim for joining us today. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, everybody.